Hello, this is episode 396 of the Keto Diet Podcast. Welcome. My name is Leanne Vogel. I blog over at healthfulpursuit.com, and I'm so excited to see you here. Today we have our guest, Dr. Kristy Harvell, founder of Health by Design, doctor of chiropractic nutrition response testing practitioner, and she loves to say weird works. Dr. Kristy Harvell graduated in the Phi Chi Omega Honor Society cum laude in December 2003 with certification in COX, flexation distraction technique. She has studied pediatrics and pregnancy care with the International Chiropractic Pediatrics Association, clinical applied nutrition at NYCC, thermographic and surface EMG diagnostics with Chiropractic Leadership Alliance, and in August 2007 became certified in Brimhall 6 Steps to Wellness, completed 200 hours of applied kinesiology training from 2011 to 2013. You get the idea. She knows a lot of stuff, and her specialty is adrenal fatigue and what the root cause is. She jokingly refers to herself as a stress expert because she's used her knowledge to help heal herself and uses that same practice with her clients. You can find Dr. Kristy over at healthbydesignfl.com and also her 12-week program 9010lifestyle.com, and her Instagram is Dr. Kristy H. That's CRISTYH. Dr. Kristy H. Okay, let's get to today's show. Hey, I'm Leanne Vogel. You're listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. I've created a free guide with tips on how to start keto and maintain your fat-fueled life. Grab it at healthfulpursuit.com/free as a little thank you for listening to the show. Dr. Kristy, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we did an episode a while ago on your podcast, and I'm so glad that you could come onto mine and have a chat with us about adrenals.
Me too. It's so needed, right?
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I already did your official bio, but I'd love to know what lights you up and what you do.
Okay, cool. Well, we're in Jacksonville, Florida. I practiced in upstate New York for 12 and a half years, and it's just super fun because when you move and start over, you get a chance to kind of recreate yourself and find out what you love in practice, what you absolutely couldn't practice without. You can kind of scrap the excess and tune into what you super love. And so I found that my niche is definitely adrenals, because probably I am adrenal for life. We can talk about how I'm your stress expert, and you can take that 2 different ways. But what we found is people in Florida have the same health issues as people in upstate New York, and there were some kind of universal truths. And so muscle testing has been my number one thing to help people. And now we're even learning how to do that virtually and expanding our knowledge base. And we just have a really cool wellness practice here where we treat from infants all the way up to the elderly and kind of teach people that alternative and natural medicine can be your first stop instead of your last resort. And that's what lights me up when the lights go on for people and they realize that and they teach that to their families.
The first stop versus last resort. That's a huge, huge mindset shift. That functional, let's get at things while they're still functionally having issues, as opposed to a hot trash fire.
Yeah, wouldn't that be easier?
Yes, it would. I always, when I get a new client and they're just having some issues and they're like, I'm not really sure, maybe it's not a big deal, but I've been dealing with this. I'm like, thank you for doing this work now. Your body thanks you. We're going to be at this a couple of months as opposed to a couple of years, just trying to tidy things up and shift things around. Do you see that in your practice also?
I do. I love it when we get somebody who already is kind of knowledgeable and has been on this journey, and we don't have to necessarily start in with their mindset and convincing them that this is the way to go. I'm always oh, you're such a gift. I'm like, you guys don't have to wait until you're totally broken to come and see me, right?
Exactly. Exactly. It's so much easier to just touch things up. It's sort of like if you leave a lawn just uncared for years and years and years, and there's dead cars in it, and just like, it's a total nightmare, to clean that up takes months. But if you just forget to mow your lawn one weekend and then you go back to it the next week, it's not going to be a huge deal. So I like to think of it kind of in that way of, the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take to figure what's going on.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
And so you mentioned muscle testing. Can you tell us what that is for people that might not know what you mean by that?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, just kind of like it sounds, a muscle test. We typically use the arm, like a patient can hold their arm straight out and we'll apply pressure downward, and they can push up into our hand and match our pressure, and the arm should stay pretty steady. It's kind of like arm wrestling, but in the air. And it's really just a non-invasive way to find out what's going on below the surface. And the way I explain it to patients, because like a lot of times people come in and they've got some background or they know somebody who referred them. And so there's like the trust factor. But when people come in and they don't know anything about it or have any background or experience, it can seem a little weird. And I just really simply say, like, my job isn't to do what everybody else does. You probably, by the time they come to you or me, they probably have already been to a lot of other people and come back empty-handed and not gotten a lot of answers, and kind of are down on luck and down on hope. And so you got to kind of remember that, like, what you and I do came about to kind of bridge the gap where medicine leaves off, because you can have a person in front of you who knows that they're not well, right? Like, they knew what it was like to experience health and wellness in their body and have vitality and feel great and do all the things and tackle life. They're coming in for a reason. There's something that motivated them to come and seek guidance and help. And so often they've had all the traditional tests and everything was normal, right? Nothing came back negative, no red flags. But you have a person in front of you who knew what health was. They remember what it was like to experience that. And they could tell you right now that is not what they're experiencing. That's not the body they're living in. That's not their reality. And so you can't tell them that there's normal. Like, clearly if there's some breakdown in the system. And so this muscle testing is a non-invasive way to find out what's going on before it will show up on a traditional blood work, diagnostic imaging, etc. And so that's the best way that I can come up to explain it, really.
I love that. And how have you seen, because we wanted to kind of talk about adrenals and fight or flight and all that today. How does that relate, like, with the muscle testing and the stuff that you do in your practice? Do you see that being beneficial to understanding what's happening with the adrenals?
Yeah, I do. And I think a lot of times when we start explaining to patients what's going on in their body and we see a breakdown in the adrenals or a fight or flight type of a response, you just simply cannot be healing. And I'll tell you, it doesn't really matter in our practice, whether it was in New York or in Jacksonville, Florida. It really doesn't matter what people come in with, if it's headaches or they know they have a named condition. It could be respiratory issues, digestive, chronic pain, anything. Usually 90% of the time we have to fix adrenals or that fight or flight or cortisol at some point. And so that's why, adrenals, I feel like people don't know about it. They don't know that that's the issue. I think it's one of the most neglected systems in traditional medicine. There's no awesome blood test. They don't really address adrenals unless you literally have a tumor or something called Cushing's disease, which is not that common. But meanwhile, the medical world teaches us that 90% of all diseases are related to stress. So in our practice, and I'm sure you're the same, we're maybe we should pay attention to that statistic. Maybe we should be the experts on stress and what stress is and how that impacts our hormone systems and this full breakdown in the body. And so muscle testing really does allow us to see that and fix it.
Today, I want to spend some time highlighting the most common signs of magnesium deficiency so that you can determine whether or not you are lacking in this mineral. Why does it matter, you might be thinking? Magnesium is involved in more than 600 biochemical reactions in your body, and 80% of Americans are magnesium deficient. Here are some of the ways to spot magnesium deficiency, and if you determine that you're low in it, I have a special Black Friday deal to share with you at the end. Okay, here we go. Are you irritable? Are you anxious? Do you struggle with insomnia? Do you experience muscle cramps or muscle twitches? Do you have high blood pressure? Are you sometimes constipated? Now, that's a pretty small list of the most common symptoms. And unfortunately, most magnesium supplements have a ton of fillers and use various forms of magnesium that your body just can't absorb. So if you're currently taking a magnesium and you're like, Leanne, I still have all these, they can't be magnesium, it's something else, I urge you to try Magnesium Breakthrough. It's the only full spectrum magnesium supplement with 7 unique forms of magnesium that your body can actually use and absorb. Here comes the best part. The makers of Magnesium Breakthrough by Optimizers are having a Black Friday special offer from November 21st to the 29th. You can get not only Magnesium Breakthrough, but all of the by Optimizers best-in-class products with 25% off. Just go to buyoptimizers.com/keto diet. That's BIOPTIMIZERS.com/keto diet and use the code keto diet to get 25% off. This Black Friday offer starts November 21st and runs until the 29th. Again, that's buyoptimizers.com/keto diet with the code keto diet. Enjoy. Wonderful. And when you're talking about stress, a lot of people, I know in my practice, I have a lot of stay-at-home moms or retired women that on a daily basis, they're managing their children if they're stay-at-home moms, or maybe their kids are even in high school and, you know, they're volunteering and that sort of stuff. And they usually say like, I got a good handle. I'm not really experiencing stress, you know, maybe like a 4 out of 10. It's not really a lot. So do you think it's always lifestyle stress, or do you think there are other contributors to stress? Either does the person maybe just not know that they're stressed, or can pathogens cause stress? Or like when you say stress, is it just simply lifestyle stress?
Yeah, that's such a good point. Stress is like all multifactorial, you know, like it's really cool that you say this because we actually had to invest in a technology in our practice for the people that we can see live called heart rate variability. And we got it simply because what we found when we just would interview people about their stress levels is that everybody grossly underestimated how stressed out they were. And I have a couple of theories we could toss around about why that might be. I don't know if it's just because they're comparing themselves to the next stressed out person, or they have that like, I don't have it as bad as so-and-so kind of a mentality. Or if, like you said, everybody thinks the word stress just means like, I'm holding it together. I think I handle it well. Things roll off my back. I can multitask like a fool. I'm getting it all done. I'm okay. Or also because they might be medicating with B vitamins or caffeine or some kind of carby, you know, food substitute to help them keep going and fight through it. But people really don't know how stressed out they are. And so we have a technology that like literally ages their stress and tells them how stressed they are. And when we sit down and discuss the results of that test, we talk about that. Like stress isn't just always like emotional stress, or, you know, if you feel stressed or weary or anxious, stress can even be excitement. It could be overworking. It could be overtraining, like physically. It could just be not really honoring the body and listening to subtle signs and symptoms and taking the time to honor like rest and recovery. I think we're terrible at booking self-love time, you know, and self-reflection and downtime. I know I was until I became what I call the stress expert. But you guys probably have all experienced that. Like, haven't you taken a vacation, had the time of your life, wasn't stressful, so to speak, but then when you come back, you almost need a vacation from your vacation. So it just can be all that, but sleep, diet, toxins in your environment, EMF, It could be yeast and bacteria. It could be a virus or parasites. It could be literally anything that is interfering with your body's natural ability to heal and do what it needs to do.
Completely. That's such a great summary to just really bring it home. You mentioned HRV. Can you tell us what that is for people that might not know what that is?
Yeah, I didn't know if I said it out loud or what it was.
Or maybe I just got it. Maybe I was like, she's talking about HRV. Maybe. I'm not sure.
Yes. Oh, got it. Okay. I didn't know if I said the letters and then didn't say what it was. Yeah, sure. HRV is heart rate variability. And it has become the gold standard for measuring stress response in the body. And it does it really simply by seeing how well your autonomic nervous system can quickly go between a fight or flight or wakeful state of your nervous system, and then how well it will recover and adapt and come back down into rest recovery state. And so it's really a comparison of your sympathetics, which people know as your fight or flight, and we also add on freeze because some people do that, compared to your rest, digest, and repair. And so what that means is that if your body's in fight or flight or perceives your outside environment as a lot more threatening than it really is, your body is always like hyper responsive and hyper reactive. And while you're in that hyper responsive state, you can be more sensitive. You could have abnormal food reactions. You could have anxiety or heart palpitations or irritability related to stress. But when you're in that state also, you're not recovering, you're not healing, you're not properly digesting and utilizing nutrients and doing all the things that your body's supposed to do to take care of you and heal and detox.
Completely. And is it the Aura Ring that does heart rate variability? I'm not very good at remembering all the products and all the things, but that's the same thing that you're speaking of, right? If people have Aura Rings, that's the same.
Yeah, it does do it. And I'm a big Aura Ring fan. I really do love it.
That's cool. And I guess the lower the score, because ideally I think it's to be over 100. And the lower it is, this is like by memory a couple of years, the lower it is, the worse off you are, sort of thing.
Exactly. I know Aura Ring, their score's a little different, and even compared to the software that we use in the office. But it's one of those counterintuitive things. Like you actually want your variability between heart rates to be big. Like you want to see changes. If it's flatlined, like your heart rate is just the same consistent. And I don't mean this is different than your pulse. That's totally different. But if the intensity of every heartbeat is just solid same, it indicates that your body can't mount a proper stress response. So let's remember there is a proper time to have fight or flight. It's there to save your life. For example, to avoid an accident, to stomp on the brakes. If you hear a loud noise, to assess, like, is that really threatening? Is there someone in my home? Do I need to defend myself or run away? Or is it just, the heat or AC turning on kind of a thing? So there's a proper time when that should happen. But once you look around, assess the scene, and decide nothing's happening, it was just the dog or something fell off the shelf, that's all the noise was, your nervous system should quickly adapt, recover, and your heart rate should return to normal. It shouldn't stay elevated, and then the whole rest of the night you're jumpy and looking around and paranoid and worried about every little sound in your home. So that would be an example of, if it's variable, it can jump appropriately, recover, and assess the scene and decide you're okay and go back to healing and digesting food and detoxing and doing all the amazing things it does behind the scenes.
That's great. And you mentioned EMF. Can you explain what that is? Because I'm guessing some ladies were like, EMF, I got to Google that. What is that she just said? And how does that have to do with my stress?
Sorry for dropping all the acronyms, everybody.
I love it. It's why we're here. Education. I mean, we hear these words ongoing all the time. And I think it's really, really helpful to just pick it apart and really help to understand so that we're more empowered and educated as it relates to our health. So I think it's great.
I agree with you completely. Yeah, some things you become like buzzwords and people never stop to think like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, and even repeat it and use it on the regular. Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
EMF are the harmful frequencies that are in our environment. The most common that people will understand is like, we know we shouldn't be on screens all the time. Your cell phone can emit EMF. Every device that is plugged into an outlet has EMF. It's a form of electricity or radiation, but it can be, in the way we're talking about it, can be harmful, or there can be positive EMF, which is healing. Like we have a PEMF healing mat in our office. It really just depends on what the frequency of that energy is. But we're talking about mainly like harmful radiation, cell phones, power lines, screens, GPS, all those types of fields that we're constantly surrounded by on a daily basis that interfere with our body's natural electromagnetic connectivity.
Yes, completely. I was reading, I'm sure you've heard of this too, because a lot of people talk about it, that mold in a natural environment where there is no EMF, it also grows, but when it's surrounded by EMF, it grows 600 times more. And I mean, that's just incredible. And we think about, we did a little EMF check on our home of just like how many devices have Bluetooth, and, your fridge now you can control from your phone, and the temperature and the TV and just all this stuff, and all that EMF has been quite an enlightening experience to kind of go down that rabbit hole and be conscious more of, when you're on your laptop, unplug it and you won't have as much EMF. When you're on your phone, make sure it's not charging. Like all those little things that you can do make such a big difference for those that need it. Would you agree?
I totally agree. And where you sleep at night, a lot of times, like, because I also am a chiropractor. And so a lot of times people are like, well, how did I get this way? And what happened? And how do I undo it? And I just simply say, like, well, think about where you spend the majority of your time, like the cumulative number of hours. And that if you could make changes in those areas, that'll have the cumulative most impact. And so, hopefully you're sleeping 7 to 9 hours a night. So what's your sleep environment like? Get the router out of your bedroom, turn the Bluetooth off your phone. Don't have your phone by your bedside. Don't have screens, expose yourself to those blue light type things before you're sleeping. Definitely don't have them on in your room. Get the TV out of the bedroom, like Apple TV. All those little things don't need to be in your sleep environment. You can make the biggest impact there. The other area where a lot of people spend the majority of their time is at work. So how can you clean up your work environment? Maybe you can't get off screens all day long, but you can limit, you don't have to have your phone, your tablet, your cell phone, your Apple Watch, and I don't even know what else could you possibly put in front of you. I think you can even have coffee mugs that have Bluetooth now. I don't even it's so unnecessary. I bought a massage gun for Christmas last year, and it was one of our favorite gifts that we got for our household. And it was funny, the guy actually, our order got messed up, so I had to go into the store to return the device. And so the manager was very kind, and he was like, unfortunately, the one you ordered isn't here, but there's a new model. If I offer you the new model for $50 more than the last one, would you be willing to purchase that one? And I was like, well, tell me a little bit about what's the difference, And he's like, well, this one connects to Bluetooth. And I looked at the guy, and I was like, why would my massager need to be connected to Bluetooth? I'm like, is it gonna tell me where I hurt and where to point the thing? And the guy just kind of was looked at me blank face, lady, I don't know, it's Christmas, are you gonna buy the thing or not? But I was just like, why is that even necessary? But you might not even know that things that you have on and in your environment on the regular are connecting to devices.
Yes, completely. Even my red light, I was so bummed when they switched the red light component to connect to other red lights and through your phone. And I'm like, I literally need to press power on, power off. Why do I need my phone to do this? It is ridiculous. You shouldn't even be on your phone when you're sitting in the red light.
Yeah, I know. It's true.
Man.
So you just kind of have to think, because unfortunately companies think those are perks and benefits, and it's become normalized, but it's not necessary. And you can turn it off, which is a good point.
Yes, completely. Whether you're keto, low carb, paleo, or somewhere in between, electrolytes facilitate hundreds of functions in the body, including the conduction of nerve impulses, hormonal regulation, nutrient absorption, and fluid balance. This is amplified on the ketogenic diet, but every human requires this balance. When you have adrenal hypo or hyperfunction, this affects your body's ability to balance sodium and potassium. Do you get headaches behind your left eye? This is a good sign that you need sodium. Headaches behind your right eye? This is a good sign you need potassium. Nearly every one of my clients that I work one-on-one with have an imbalance of electrolytes when they first come to see me. Symptoms such as headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, sleeplessness, are seen right there in their blood work. Much of this is improved with proper electrolyte supplementation. Now, I personally consume at least 1 packet of electrolytes daily, and not just any electrolyte, Element electrolytes, because it doesn't have sugar, fillers, coloring, artificial gunk, and has the effective electrolyte ratio that so many other guys don't do right, with 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, 60 milligrams of magnesium, that perfect combination. Right now, Element is offering my listeners a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. This is a great way to try all 8 flavors or share Element with a salty friend. Get yours at drinklmnt.com/KDP. This deal is only available through my link. You must go to drinklmnt.com/KDP. Element offers a no questions asked refund, so you can try it totally risk-free. If you don't like it, share it with a friend and they will give you your money back, no questions asked. You really have nothing to lose. I just love these guys. Again, it's drinklmnt.com/KDP.
And so when you're speaking about adrenals, is it also related to mitochondria? Because basically everything we've talked about so far also affects the mitochondria. So are you of the thought that mitochondrial dysfunction equals adrenal dysfunction? Like,
Yeah,
do you tie those two together?
definitely. And it's funny because I'm in the process of setting up a virtual practice, and what I'm quickly finding is, like, in the online space, it's very different than like my brick and mortar practice, where in my little local town I have name and brand recognition. And so you're supposed to kind of pick a niche that sets you apart. And I'll tell you a little trick. The reason I picked adrenal fatigue is because I didn't actually have to niche down, because it connects to everything. Like, I still get to treat all the things, and be more of a primary care type of a person and not just have one single focus. So absolutely it ties into mitochondrial function.
Yeah, completely. I think that's, it was like when I was specializing in hormones, but we talked a lot about the ketogenic diet. And so, yeah, that niche, we call it niche up north and niche down south, whatever, however you say it, it really does. It ties into so many things. So what about diet, and how does that influence? Can it stress? You mentioned like working out can stress out the adrenals if you're not recovering. Can a certain type of diet either benefit or cause issues with adrenals?
Yeah. So, there's lots of different things. And even with adrenals, like, everybody's unique and individualized. So, like, when you get assessed, you could be at different layers or levels of adrenal fatigue. And so, the assessment and recommendations might be different per what level, as well as like who you are and what you're dealing with and what stage of life you're at and your activity levels and all that. But I think, like, in common, the things, it's probably any condition, honestly, but just think, like, you're trying to create healing in the body, and you're trying to get the body to stop being an adrenaline junkie. And so even though you could be wired and tired or just totally fatigued, the tendency, I think, is a lot to like use mega B vitamins, energy drinks, caffeine, any kind of stimulant like that to keep on the adrenaline junkie hook, because if you're going on adrenaline, it means your body isn't able to produce the normal energy productivity. Like you're not thriving on your body's natural energy systems. And so this is a bypass. Your body's running on adrenaline and cortisol to give you that high to keep going. And so when you're on stimulants, which could even be processed foods and neurotoxins, caffeine for sure, that's just keeping the body in the state of fight or flight. And so even though you're exhausted, you really have to break that cycle and stop thriving on the stimulants. So that's the one thing that I don't think it matters to me, who you are, what phase of adrenal fatigue. We have to break the cycle of constantly seeking an adrenaline high through our diet.
Mm-hmm. Completely. And so you've mentioned fight, flight, freeze. What are the sort of symptoms that somebody can say, like, I'm going through this, I think this relates to me? Can you shed some more light on that?
Yeah. I mean, the things I think that people would identify, if you just, anxiety, like feelings of anxiousness, which is usually think of it like heart rate is elevated, sweaty palms, butterflies in your stomach, or maybe queasy or loss of appetite, carrying a lot of tension, in your body. If you're just always hurting and have musculoskeletal soreness, it's probably because you're holding yourself like super tight, shallow breathing, inability to sleep. Your energy could be flip-flop. Some people have a slow start and then get a second wind late at night. You also could have energy highs and lows or blood sugar highs and lows. And so, if you're like starving and then you eat a lot of like super carby foods and then you crash, the typical window of people that have that afternoon crash is between 1 and 3. So if you have an afternoon slump between 1 and 3, that's a pretty good chief flag. You also could be just tired all the time. If it gets to the level 4 stage adrenal fatigue, these people are close to blacking out. They're dizzy. Brain fog is a big one, even in all phases of it, but it gets intensifyingly worse. Forgetfulness, if you're super agitated with your family, little things that didn't used to bother you suddenly trigger you. And also, like, if you just don't recover. So, like, if somebody cuts you off in traffic on your way to work, and then that ruins your whole entire day, you didn't bounce back or adapt from that.
Yeah, completely. I was definitely in stage 4, living in mold, thinking it was just my adrenals, and constantly, going in for all of the shots and things that my doctor was like, we got to get these adrenals working. And it wasn't until we moved out of the mold that I was like, wait, I feel so much better, So yeah, your environment, like we've talked about the EMF and the things, it's multifaceted.
It is. And that's the thing, like, I know adrenal fatigue, almost didn't pick that as my niche, like we were just discussing earlier, because I know now that more people know what adrenal fatigue is. People in our industry are bashing the phrase adrenal fatigue. But I think it's important because, the people who are experiencing it aren't on the same trajectory as the practitioners that are treating it. And so I wanted to keep the phrase alive, but also be somebody who gets to the root cause and explains to people how they got to that point of this fight or flight adrenals dysfunctioning. And now we're knowing that the adrenal issue is really the reaction or the symptom to all these years of like stressors and interferences and poor diet. You can't just jump in and start taking like adaptogenic herbs, which still are great. But what I find is people who try to DIY their health and maybe take the cheaper way out and don't want to pay for guidance or a professional to help them and get in all these adrenal fatigue support groups and all that, they're all looking for like the quick fix. And you just have to get out of that mental mind space that there is a quick fix, because it took years, sometimes decades, to get to that way in the first place. And you got to backtrack and peel the layers back and heal all those different things before your body will get in balance and right itself. So we're not necessarily just trying to handle the symptom that is now adrenal fatigue.
Completely.
I really hope you're enjoying today's episode. I'd love to see where you're listening from. You can snap a pic and tag me at Leanne Vogel, or leave a review for the show on your favorite podcast player. It helps me out tremendously. Okay, back to the good stuff.
And the symptoms that you discussed earlier, you also mentioned a little while ago that there aren't really good labs as it relates to adrenals. So if somebody listening to this episode today is like, I think I have this, but do I talk to my doctor? Do I go in for blood work? Do I do saliva testing? Or do I just go simply off? Yeah, you basically described me.
I know. I mean, you can kind of go just by like you basically described me, but then you have to find somebody that can pull apart the layers and sift through and prioritize and decide what maybe like order to handle things into. There's a lot of great like adrenal fatigue, like symptom type questionnaires that you could take online. And sometimes I do just send our patients to that just to take it so they can identify with something and recognize like there actually are people that understand this. This is a real thing. I'm not on my own, because sometimes you need that confirmation that somebody hears you.
Completely. And so we've talked about heart rate variability and stress and all these things. And we've talked about how to reduce EMF and stimulants and how that can support. Are there other ways? Like if somebody's saying, okay, pretty sure this is a thing for me. I always thought that it was my lifestyle. It sounds like there's more to this than just living a stress-free life. And where can they go from here? Are there things that you've created to kind of help bridge that gap? And what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, we created the 90-10 lifestyle, and we were adamant about just not calling it a diet or a nutrition program or whatnot, because we really feel like health is multifaceted, and it does take an understanding of lifestyle and having the proper tools, and also somebody to hold you accountable and handhold and explain things and make it in an orderly fashion. So we created that, with the adrenal fatigue people in mind, also because we recognize that like there's a lot of really educated people out there that know, like a lot of our patients even tell us that, like, I know what I should be doing, I'm just not doing it. And I'm like, I got it. And we talk about like stacking some small wins along the way. So we're like, well, don't you think like maybe you would do some of those things if you felt better first, or you started sleeping through the night a little more successfully, or like maybe you had a better like start in the morning and you weren't so groggy, or if we could lift off a little bit of the brain fog and then you could start meal planning and, deciding your menu and shopping for your family. So, don't be too hard on yourself and give yourself a little bit of grace. Like you are where you're at. And that's reality, but you need tools and you need a system. And sometimes you just need to like hand yourself over to somebody. And I think that's hard for people to do, to kind of let the reins out and be like, I trust you, you're my person, I'm going to do this. And also give it the proper amount of time and due diligence to get a result. Like don't dabble in this and dabble in that and take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Like you probably, whoever you follow, you really need to follow it through in completion,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dabbling. I was a dabbler.
Yeah.
I'm a dabbler. Doesn't accomplish much.
Yeah. And there's so many great people, whether it's me or you, Leanne, or one of our, fellow colleagues out there. But that is a really good point. You do just, whoever your person's going to be that you resonate with, that's going to handhold, that you're going to hand this over to, hand it over to them fully, because obviously you can't do it all by yourself. But if you don't do it in completion, or you're mixing things up, whoever program it is, you're only going to get a portion of the success.
Yes, completely. Where can people find more from you and connect with you?
Yeah, we're on all the social media. Dr. Kristy H on Instagram. Our in-office Jacksonville local practice is called Health by Design. We have a page for that as well. You can go on the 9010lifestyle.com to learn more about the program that we have laid out. We're kind of everywhere.
Yeah, I love that. I will include links in the show notes for today's episode. And so just click around and find those. And if not, you guys can go to ketodietpodcast.com and click around for episode 396. And Dr. Kristy, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome. I'm a big fan of yours. I've been reading your stuff for years, and I'm super excited that we got to connect and start to know each other. It takes a village, and I just love, we got to all stay connected and keep with like-minded people, and your audience needs to do the same.
Yeah, it's so true. It definitely helps to have friends all over the place doing this kind of work and cheering each other on, because sometimes it gets a little bit challenging, and encouraging one another and telling each other where the next conference is. And that's always really exciting stuff too.
Yeah. And I think that's super cool for everyone to understand is like, when you listen to me or Leanne, you are part of our network, which extends way beyond, where you are locally or where you're tuning in from. You get a whole connection of awesome, like-minded people all over the world.
It's so true. I was chatting with some people on Instagram about, you remember when we wanted to order stuff for ourselves? We couldn't just go on the internet because there was no such thing. And we would get magazines and we'd be like, I want this thing. And you would put your money in an envelope and send it off. And this is before internet. And it's just, the internet is just, there's some really, really beautiful parts to it. And that's one of my favorite things is community all over the place, no matter where you are in some little town where there's very little support, if anything. You can be walking your dog and listening to two people talking about adrenals and hear yourself and your story. And it is just such an incredible experience for us.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Love it. Dr. Kristy, thank you again for coming on the show. This was a blast, and we hope to have you back again soon.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
I hope you enjoyed our episode here with Dr. Kristy. Again, you can find her by going to healthbydesignfl.com, her program 9010lifestyle.com, and her Instagram, Dr. Kristy H. That's DrKristyH on Instagram. See you next Tuesday. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. Join us again in a couple of days to discover more keto for women secrets for your fat-fueled life. Music for the Keto Diet Podcast provided by Yechi. Follow Jacob on Instagram at Yechi_official and on Spotify as Yechi. That's YECHI. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representations or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.